When most people think about concrete, they think about the cheap $5 per bag stuff, but very few people know that there's an entirely different type of concrete that is used to make custom high-end countertops. These custom concrete countertops go for about $100 per square foot, more than granite or marble. Now in the kitchen for my abandoned building renovation, we have about 100 square feet of counter space. Do the math. That's about $10,000 of countertop. I'm lucky here because I'm getting to go out to Fishstone Concrete's professional concrete artisan studios. I'm going to be showing you the whole process as we make these $100 square foot countertops. So at the end of the video, you can be the judge if they're worth it. Now cue the sizzle reel. Now before we dive into the process, let's take a look at all the pieces that we need to make for my kitchen. First up, we've got the 10-foot by 4-foot island. The top of the island includes an 8-foot section of concrete with a knockout for the induction cooktop and a 2-foot section of butcher block countertop, which I make in a separate video. The island also includes a concrete waterfall section at one end. Across from the island on the back wall of the kitchen, we've got a nook with a 5-foot countertop that extends all the way back to the exposed brick wall. Last up, we've got what I'll just call the long wall of the kitchen, and that's an 18-foot run broken into 3 sections. We've got 2 long 8-foot sections, one of which includes a knockout for an undermount sink, and at the end we've got a short filler that extends all the way to the back wall, and this will be entirely covered by the yet-to-be-built corner cabinet. So countertops, which are cast in melamine forms, are typically referred to as precast countertops. The other main type of concrete countertop that you may have seen being pour in place. And that's literally what it sounds like, just pouring the concrete in place in your kitchen. It's super messy, and there's a whole bunch of other reasons I prefer precast, but we're not gonna get into that debate right now. Since we're doing precast concrete, the very first step is gonna be making templates of the countertops so that we know exactly how big to make the concrete forms. So to make the templates, we're gonna be using Luan, or just sometimes called underlayment. It's sold in your underlayment section. It's a really thin, inexpensive plywood. We've ripped 3-inch strips of it. And we can cut these with aviation snips and use hot glue to attach them, so that just makes templating super easy.
And what we want to do is determine the amount of overhang that we have here. We got a 3/4 inch door,
right?
And then we want a 3/4 inch overhang,
right?
So we're going to go 1.5 inches off.
Perfect.
I got this cool little trim gauge. Put this on the face of the cabinet, pull that right out there, and then you know you have exactly 1.5 inches. And then we can put our brad nail there, and that's locked in place.
Yeah.
All right.
So go a little bit.
You don't need a ton of it.
All right, and we're in.
Are you helping the guys? Yeah?
Oh, yes. Yes. All right, we're pretty much done with the templates. Tom's just putting a few more reinforcing pieces on there to make sure that they hold their shape while we transport them back to his shop. I'm gonna just snap my fingers and we will transport you in the video instantly to Tom's workshop. And we are here. It is time to build the concrete forms out of melamine. You guys ready to get going?
We're ready.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. We've got the forms over there. They're about a little under 26 inches. So Tom is gonna rip down some 26-inch pieces of melamine over here. So what we're doing here is basically making a melamine box where we're gonna pour the concrete in and cast them upside down. For the sides, we're just gonna rip melamine strips. So we make them 2 inches thick, and that way when we push them against the sides of the 3/4 inch thick melamine, you'll have 1 1/4 inch inside, exactly the thickness we want for the countertops. We just come around with screws, screw these in all the way around, and then we got our form. fit in there. Nice. So the plan for the waterfall is that we're gonna have a reveal right at the edge where the waterfall side meets the countertop. It's a very intentional, sharp looking design feature that also gives you a margin of error if something doesn't line up exactly perfect between those two slabs when you install. And to create that reveal, we're just gonna cut a 1/2 inch piece of foam that we can glue into the form and pour right over. So we have to make a knockout in the countertops for the sink, and I actually brought the sink out with me, and the sink comes with a template that we can use to make the knockout, but we're just gonna carry that thing over there and put it in the form. I like to visually verify things.
Is that actually how the professionals are supposed to do that?
We're doing an undermount sink, which means we have to make a knockout that's exactly the same shape as that square so that the edge of the countertop lines up with that. We don't have 1.25 inch foam. We're gonna take the 3/4 inch and 1/2 inch and we're gonna use double-sided tape to glue them together. And then we'll have 1.25 inch.
And we marked the center line on the mold there, so if you want to put that spacer in there, I'm going to just come right up against it.
Drop that in, yep.
Yep,
Drop that in the
perfect.
center, so now it's just lining everything up.
Yep. Then we'll run a quick bead of caulk around here, just like the edges, and that'll be good.
And now we're basically doing the same thing that we did for the sink knockout to make a knockout for the cooktop that's going to the island. And I'm just using the double-sided transfer tape. We got the center marked. Flip it over. Gonna line the center up. Tom let me do this one because this edge is all gonna be hidden when you drop the cooktop in. So it really doesn't matter if this is pretty. We just need to hold it. What I'm doing here is just laying down some paste wax at the seams. And this is going to prevent the caulk that we put down from fully sticking to the edges, so that when we run a fondant ball tool around, which you'll see in a second, it'll push the excess away from the seams. And then because the paste wax is on there, we'll be able to peel that excess right off the melamine, and it's gonna leave a perfect caulk line at the end. So that's a little trick. It actually works on like glass or whatever you're caulking if you just use a little paste wax. So now we're laying down silicone caulk. I always like to start with the corners just to make sure we get a good amount in there, get them seamed. And then I run my bead around the edges. And it's time for one of the most, if not the most satisfying part of making concrete countertops, and that is peeling the caulk off of the forms.
So for today's pour, we're going to use HP 50 as our base mix. Basically just a standard mix. It has sand, cement, and pozzolan in it. We got a cheat sheet here, so when we're batching stuff out today, we're going to use Super 6, 1.25 pounds of that. Why we call it Super 6 is because it has 6 admixtures in there. Polymer, plasticizer, defoamer, shrinkage reducer, surfactant, and a waterproofer on it.
Basically what those admixes are gonna do, and correct me if I'm wrong here, they make the mix more liquid and soupy without adding more water. So it can be a liquid mix that pours really easy, but it's still really strong. And then they also leave a really nice surface with no bubbles and all that sort of good stuff.
There's a lot of chemistry behind
Yeah.
it, that's for sure.
The pigment that we're using is gonna be a powdered pigment, and that's important because you can't mix all the concrete at once. We've got like 700 pounds of concrete for the whole kitchen. You gotta do batches. So to get the colors match, you have to weigh it out. So each batch has exactly the same weight of pigment. And the glass fibers are one of the main parts that allow us to have super thin. We're only going 1.25 inches thick, much thinner than you would with standard concrete, and you don't have to have any rebar or reinforcement. That glass fiber gives you all the reinforcement you need. It is time for the moment of truth. I was getting so nervous because like once you start mixing, you are committed. There's no turning back.
We're starting with 7 pounds of water. We just dump that all into our mixing bucket. And then here's our 1 pound of black pigment pre-dosed. We're just gonna dump it right in the water. This is our Super 6 admix, and then we're gonna dump that right in the water. For our bag mix, we're gonna dump in about 80% of it, and then we're gonna mix this up so it's a really good consistency, very fluid and sloshy.
As you can see here, the first batch that was poured into each form was mixed to be a runny pancake batter-like consistency, and we didn't add any glass fibers into this batch. Because we're casting these upside down, this thin layer at the bottom of the form without any glass fibers or other large aggregates will give you a super smooth top to the concrete countertop when you demold.
We're gonna use this same batch for at least these two halves that are at the seam so that we know that they're exactly matching.
And then just
Work it in those corners. Play a little song. One of the questions I get a lot when have been spraying glass fiber reinforced concrete, if you've ever seen me do that, is whether you can pour the face coat. The answer is obviously yes. When there's no sort of large vertical surfaces, then you can just pour in the face coat like this and just work it in with your hands to get a really nice finish. And this is just gonna help to level things out and make sure that there's no air bubbles in the surface. So this is your first time concreting with me. I'm gonna dump it in and then you're just gonna spread it around as a face coat so you get it nice and even. Then you're gonna work it into the corners with your fingers. Got it?
We let the beauty coat firm up for about an hour and then started mixing up the backer coat. This is going to be the exact same ratio of the HP 50 concrete mix and the Super 6 ad mix, but this time we're adding in the glass fibers, which is going to make it super strong. When you go to the big box store and buy concrete, it's usually about 3,000 to 5,000 PSI. We're going to get somewhere near 14 or 15,000 PSI. Adding the backer coat is pretty straightforward. The only tricky part is that you need to work the backer coat into the face coat so that the two layers bond, but you don't want to press so hard as to push the backer coat through the face coat. And this might sound kind of tricky, but when you actually get your hands dirty, literally, you find that it's not really that hard to do. Just something you need to be mentally present for to avoid a mistake. Tom has got a surprise for me up his sleeve. I didn't know we were doing some carbon fiber.
There's carbon fiber filaments in here with an epoxy coating. Each one of these strands can actually support 2,000 pounds before it'll break. So right here you got 4,000 pounds this could lift up.
That's gonna go in so that the thinner parts right by the sink will have some extra reinforcement.
With the carbon fiber mesh in place, we filled up the rest of the form and then screeded the top to get a nice level surface. And screeding is basically just taking a long, flat piece of wood and wiggling it side to side as you move down the form to push excess concrete out of the form. We then waited about an hour till the concrete had firmed up to a jello-like consistency and pushed in some drywall anchors around the sink knockout. These will provide locations where we can screw in clips that'll hold the undermount sink to the underside of the countertops.
We just had a delicious lunch and it is time to cast the rest of the countertops. We got the big island, the biggest piece we're gonna do right behind me. Gonna knock that out and then knock out the rest. We're just gonna go bam, 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 knock them all out this afternoon.
So we poured all the countertops now, and what we've done is basically construct a makeshift cooler to keep all the moisture in with the plastic and use this insulating foam to keep all the heat inside there. Hot and moist is the best way to cure concrete to get the strongest output product. Right. Woo, looks like it's good. We're back a few days later and the concrete has cured enough that we can demold from the forms. But first, we got to do a little processing while it's in the forms to grind down the underside on the edges so that the edges are perfectly level and flat, and you can run your hand on the underside of the counters and it'll feel nice. So one thing super nice out here is that we can just roll them out into the big parking lot and do the grinding outside. So sorry guys, I lied a little bit. We got one more step before we get to demolding. We want to make sure that the edges that overhang the cabinets, the ones that you could feel if you run your hands along it, are absolutely perfect and beautiful. So what we're gonna do is a thin slurry coat, and all the slurry coat is a really runny mix of the HP50, same stuff we used for the actual mix itself, but with no glass fibers and a little liquid polymer added in. You're gonna rub that in to fill in any voids or holes and get a nice, even, consistent color on the underside where we know that it's gonna be exposed. And then we'll sand it off. Everything will be nice and pretty underneath.
Ready? Yeah.
Woo!
Hold on. Throw it right on the table here.
Woo, look at that. And now the grand finale is flipping over the 300-pound island. A little nervous about that, but I think we got it. And if we don't, well, hey, at least we'll get on film when it snaps in half, but hopefully that doesn't happen.
Try to just get a little bit upward.
Ready? Stretch your back. Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Ready? 1, 2. Tell me when you're ready. Yep. All the way. 1, 2, 3, go.
Okay.
You gotta get on the millimeter or the
Walk the millimeter.
Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, go. I'm good. Oh, this is easy.
Yeah,
Oh,
this part's easy.
It's a lot easier
It's all
than I
about, it's all about positioning there.
thought. Fantastic.
Yeah, it looks awesome.
Let's just hope we get the measurements right.
So now we're gonna hit this with 400 grit sandpaper to even out all the surfaces, then a quick acid wash, and that should give us a really nice surface finish. We decided to call a last minute audible here. I was looking at some of the finishing options. I really liked how a wet polished top looks. It'll take probably like an extra half day to wet polish all these, but we're gonna do that so we get the nicest, smoothest, cleanest finish. For the sealer, we're going with Fishstone's U-Seal product, which is an acrylic urethane. It's a two-part product, so we mix it up in a bucket, let it sit for 30 minutes to make sure everything is mixed properly. We do a primer coat first, where after mixing, we dilute it 3-to-1 with water, and we just douse the surface with it so it soaks in really well. Then after that primer coat dries, we come back with full-strength coats, roll them on, and that's gonna give us a nice surface seal on the concrete and give us that really nice matte look on the surface. Today is an exciting day. I actually hired some professional countertop installers to transport the countertops from Fishstone Studios over to the building because, well, I figured I would save a lot of money there, so it was worth spending a little money just to ensure that they got here safely because they've got all the right equipment. So now let's get them installed.
Nice.
Okay, hold on.
Careful. Look at that, perfect fit for the undermount sink. I'll go in there and slide.
Countertops are in, and this is Tom over here. Guy installed it from Fishstone Granite. I gotta shout them out. They did a great job getting it here. They're great guys to call for granite, marble, anything of that in the Chicago area. So hit them up. I'll put like their contact info in the description of the video.
Thank you, Mike.
One more important step before we reveal the countertops, and that is leveling them with shims and adhering them with some construction adhesive. This is a big job. I can't do it myself. So I got Jacob and his brother Jeremy who are in town today. They're helping out. Thank you guys. And yeah, let's get these locked down so we can see what they're gonna look like in the end. We're gonna talk a little bit more about the cost of the countertop and look at the beauty shots of how it came out. But first, I wanna say a quick thank you to Tom Fisher from Fishstone. True story, and I'm gonna get a little sentimental here. Tom was literally the very first person to ever support me doing YouTube. Before I had any YouTube videos out, I just had a couple blog posts on doing some concrete projects. Tom liked those enough that he sent me some concrete products, no questions asked. And I used those products in my very first YouTube videos. That was almost 5 years ago. Since then, Tom has become a good friend. And of course,
His company, Fishstone Concrete, makes some awesome concrete products. There'll be a link in the description if you're interested in doing your own DIY concrete projects and want to level them up from your standard sort of store-bought concrete. So let's talk cost for a little bit. I based the $10,000 figure on a roughly $100 a square foot price that is pretty standard around here in Chicago. Now that will vary, of course, different areas of the country. Some it might be more, some it might be less, and I don't want to argue and get in the weeds. That's pretty much what something like this is going to cost and what people who have this in their home have paid for it. But now the question, why does it cost so much? Well, the materials are more expensive. You're talking $5 a bag when you look at the cheap concrete versus roughly 50 pounds a bag when you're looking at this stuff. If you had absolutely nothing to get going, you'd be talking maybe $300 to $400 in tools, plus about $800 in material to make a kitchen like this. So where's the other $9,000 come from? It's labor. I tried to give you guys a glimpse in this video of how much work it is. Not only a lot of work time-wise, but very difficult work lifting 50-pound buckets of concrete around, getting really messy. It's hard work. So the labor is really why it costs so much. Now the question of whether you think it's worth it. I love this stuff. It's a very unique look. It's super clean. It's super modern. I'm curious what you guys think. Would you include something like this in your home? And I've got thick skin. If you don't like it, you too, feel free to say so. There's a full industry out there of people making this, putting this in very high-end homes. So it's not gonna hurt my feelings if somebody out there doesn't like it. And now without further ado, let's cue up the beauty shots so you guys can check out the finished product. I also wanted to talk to all those who've been following my abandoned building renovation series. You're probably noticing that there are a lot of changes in the kitchen. I'm not showing you guys everything here, just the countertops. The full kitchen reveal will be coming soon, along with a few other videos on the build out for the kitchen. And for those of you that haven't subbed yet, please do hit that sub button, hit the bell button. You know how to do it, so just, go ahead and do it. I am so excited for the full kitchen reveal and all the other kitchen videos that are coming. That's it for this time. I will see you next time. This time we're gonna build an impossibly thin concrete lounger, only 3/4 of an inch thick with no rebar. Why so thin? Well, because the shape is inspired by the thin, streamlined piece of furniture that first sparked my interest in design way back when I was in high school, the Corbusier LC4. You see, when I was a teenager, I walked into a Sharper Image store and saw this chair. It was the first piece of furniture I'd ever fallen in love with. Now I'm gonna be making an outdoor lounger inspired by the shape out of concrete, and the first thing that we gotta do is figure out dimensions. So we're just gonna bust out a tape measure and see where these curves are that fit the body so perfectly.
She's curvy and she owns it. I like that.
16.5 inches by 18.5, 32. Also got to grab the angles, about 130, 122. See, I would have thought they were like 30, 60, 90s, but it is what it is. So we got our measurements. I'm gonna head to the computer and get to designing. I think I have a design here. I'm gonna have like a curved concrete shape here and kind of have it recessed in like a circular wood base. And I'm thinking it'd be really cool if the base could somehow spin and rotate. That's gonna be one major challenge. I don't think your average lazy Susan hardware is gonna work for that. Second challenge is just gonna be getting this concrete shape, and I wanna make a form that's reusable because I could see this actually being a product that I sell. All right, let's get down to the shop and start working on the concrete form for this.
I'm building this form to cast the concrete upside down. And the first step is using my CNC to cut out these inner supports for the form from MDF.
got all the pieces cut for what we'll call the skeleton of the form. We've got a bunch of cross braces. We have 3 pieces that are supporting it. And now we just gotta assemble this form.
With that support structure assembled, it's time to make the curvy base for the concrete form. And I wanted to try something different and see if I could save a little bit of money by using plywood underlayment on the base, because it does flex quite a bit. And then I'll be topping that with a fiberglass enforced PVC wall panel, which will give us the waterproof layer we need to cast concrete against. And both these materials can be easily ripped down to size on the table saw. And to improve the odds, I sprayed down the underlayment with water just to make it flex a bit more, but
well, God. Thought I had enough flex in this, but apparently not.
No flex, zone.
I think I'm gonna have to suck it up. This is a $12 sheet. I'll have to go buy some bendy ply, which is quite a bit more expensive. It is what it is.
That one's
Okay.
60 something.
Okay, I will be out in a little bit to grab it. We'll be back once we have that. Got the bendy ply, so gonna rip this down the plywood and be back on track making the form. All right, the base of bendy ply is in. And for those of you that don't know, bendy ply, it's basically just taking plywood and making the grain of the wood run all the same direction. Normally plywood has grain running this way. It alternates 90 degrees, and that gives it a lot of strength and makes it rigid. This one, all the layers of wood in this plywood run the same direction, which means it's bendable along this direction, 90 degrees to the grain, but not along this direction, running with the grain. We don't want too much flex, because when we put the concrete in, we don't want to have bumps in it. So we can't have screws or nails or showing through the top of this. We need it to be smooth. So we're gonna use contact cement to put this on the form. This stuff bonds instantly, so it is a little bit nerve-wracking. You apply this stuff to both pieces of material, then you kind of use little pieces of wood or dowels or whatever to separate the 2 pieces so it doesn't touch, because it's like instantly bonding. So if it touches and bonds out of alignment, you're kind of screwed. I want to be able to reuse this form. So I'm going to cover the edges of these melamine sides with a little bit of melamine edge banding. That'll waterproof those so that when we're doing the concrete, it doesn't get in there. Hopefully when we pop the sides off, it'll all come clean and we'll be able to use the sides again as well. We'll see how it goes. I just realized this little fast cap roller thing I have for putting on edge banding. Totally like a little skateboard with this thing being a ramp. The form is assembled, and to be honest, this thing is probably the prettiest form I've ever made with edge banding and everything. It's almost a shame that we're gonna have to put concrete in that thing, but you know, gotta do what we gotta do. Before we do the do, it's time for another episode of
Caulk Talk, which is the same as every episode of Caulk Talk. I apply a layer of paste wax to the milling, lay down a generous layer of 100% silicone caulk, run a metal fondant ball tool over all the caulk lines. Metal fondant ball tool pushes excess caulk to the sides, leaves a clean line over the seam, and the layer of paste wax makes it easy to peel the excess caulk away once it cures, leaving a perfect caulk line. And that's it for this episode of Caulk Talk.
All right, it's concrete time. Always a little nerve-wracking, also a little exciting. We're gonna be spraying the face coat in, then putting in the back coat with glass fibers. This is only gonna be about 3/4 of an inch thick, and I know there's gonna be people banging on their keyboards saying there's no way that's gonna last without a bunch of rebar, it's gonna break, fall apart. Well, about 5 years ago, I did a similar curved project sitting in Chris Salamoni's backyard. Been there 5 years, been outdoors in the elements for that long, so I think we're gonna be fine. And on that note, I gotta get all the ingredients measured out, and then we'll start spraying.
Since this lounger is only 3/4 of an inch thick, we can't just use any old concrete. We're gonna be using a specialized mix from Fishstone, which will be reinforced with glass fibers. I then spray a thin layer of the mix onto the form. The glass fibers we'll add later don't look good if they're exposed, and this thin face coat will hide them, giving us a really nice smooth surface.
So one thing we're gonna do, instead of just using glass fibers, is we got this alkali resistant glass fiber mesh or scrim. So we're gonna cut this down and just lay a sheet of this into the form when we do the back coat, just to give it a nice continuous reinforcement, and it should make it nice and strong.
With the mesh cut to size, we set it aside and got to work mixing up the back coat, which is the same HP50 mix as we used in the face coat, but with alkali resistant glass fibers added to it. So while we're hand packing the back coat in, let me talk about why this mix is so much stronger than your cheap big box store concrete. First up, you've obviously got the glass fibers as reinforcement. And something as thin as we're doing, putting thick rebar in it would actually make it weaker instead of stronger. So in this scenario, glass fibers are a superior reinforcement. But there's a lot to it beyond just the glass fibers. The mix also uses a plasticizer, which essentially makes the mix more fluid with less water, so you can have a higher concentration of Portland cement. More than double the amount of cement for the same volume compared to cheap mixes. There's also an acrylic polymer in the mix. You can kind of think of the polymer as something that fills the space between the cement molecules and the concrete with a plastic instead of air like you'd have in a typical mix. This means glass fiber reinforced concrete is much more dense and can actually flex a little bit. It isn't brittle like typical concrete. All these things result in a really, really strong concrete. And I know there'll be some haters out there that don't believe me, but it's going to be plenty strong at 3/4 of an inch thick. And if you're at the other end of the spectrum wondering why 3/4 of an inch is such a big deal, if you were to make something like this out of a standard big box store mix, you'd probably be looking at 1.5 to 2 inches thick at least in order to make it structurally sound.
All right, it is 3 days later. Hopefully it is nice and hard.
That's what she said.
Just gonna grind down any imperfections on the edges there and then pop this sucker out. Oop, we got a little crackage in the corner we're gonna have to repair. Something happened there. There we go. Broke the seal. All right. That is pretty cool. Are you filming? All right, if I fall, let's see how it fits. Oh, if it breaks. Oh yeah, that's not a bad fit. That's nice. It's a nice ergonomic seat there. Oh, good. It is tipping back. It's pretty decently balanced, though. I got to give it to old Corbusier. You want to try it? No.
So next up, we got to figure out the base for this. And I've got a couple ideas here. First up, we got the circular base, but finding heavy duty rotating hardware for this wide of a base might be tricky, because if someone steps on the edge of this base here, the whole thing could tip over if you don't have big enough rotating hardware. Second option, switching to a narrower lip shape. Well, I think it actually looks better. It just looks more proportional. You'll still have a little surface here where you can put a drink, but because the base is narrower, we can use some hardware that is about $200 or $300 less, just because it's smaller for the rotating base. So I think we're gonna go with the lip shape. And I want this to get outside, so I think we'll need some sort of dimensional 4x4 lumber. Let's just head to the lumber yard and figure it out.
Thinking cedar, but cedar has been pretty darn expensive recently. Maybe we'll find something cheaper. We do want it to look good though.
So we've got all the treated lumber here. I don't like this because I actually want to run the pieces through the planers. Heading in this warehouse, see what cedar looks like in here.
Okay, we're up on the balcony now, and we've got more S4S 4x4x10 cedar. And right now, it looks like there's a sale on the stuff that's S4S. So no reason not to get that. It's actually less expensive than rough stone. I think we're just gonna grab that. It's like $35 board. We need like 4 10-footers, so not too bad. We've got a drive-through here. Pick this up.
Back in the workshop, I cut the 4x4s to length, and then it was a pretty simple glue up.
All kosher.
I ran the boards on the jointer and then through the planer to get 2 sides that were even.
Wish you guys could be here. I can smell some fresh cut cedar. Pretty darn hard to beat. Gotta lay these out. So now we're just gonna get these laid out how we want them, with alternating grains on the end. Then we're gonna glue these bad boys right on up.
Then I busted out my favorite parallel clamps from channel sponsor Rockler Woodworking to get everything glued up. Also got to give a shout out to Rockler's little comb tooth spreader for spreading the glue. It's one of those little things that didn't cost much, but I use it all the time and just absolutely love it. Once the glue had dried, I moved the panel onto the CNC to carve out a dip in the wood that will allow us to recess the concrete lounger into the wood base. Now here I was a little bit nervous because this was my first time ever doing a 3D carve into wood.
Oh man, that is nice. Like, almost don't even need to sand that. I am relieved that came out okay. It's actually the first time I've ever 3D carved wood. I've done foam before, never wood. Now we just gotta cut out the ellipse right around it. Hopefully if all my calculations were right, then the divot in the middle will be right in the middle of the ellipse, so.
Now I don't currently have a CNC bit that will cut all the way through that 3.5 inch base, so that means we're gonna have to use human controlled tools to finish cutting out the ellipse. I started by using a jigsaw to cut off the excess, staying just proud of the line cut by the CNC. Then I busted out a templating bit to cut everything flush as far down as that bit would reach, but I realized it wouldn't reach all the way, so the last step was to move it over to the router table and use a flush trim bit to cut the remainder off. This bit is super scary and I never get used to using it, and this time, unfortunately, some of those fears came true.
Wheel, we got an issue. I really hope we don't have to throw this out and start over. Basically, got a big chunk here that just came out. I think we're gonna be able to glue it back in. So I'm gonna try to get some wood glue underneath this, clamp it, and hopefully once it's clamped on that crack, it'll disappear and then cut it. So this is the part that was blown out. On the top, can't even really tell. It's a little divot here, but once we sand down a little bit more, that will go away. But other than that, I mean, that whole section, can't even see the spot here or here where we reattach that chunk.
It fits. It's in a little recessed nook, and it's pretty stable. However, I think we're gonna build some little supports in the middle, which really won't change the aesthetic. We can just put these blocks next to the lounger and draw the angle we need to cut. Then we can head over to the bandsaw, cut out the angle we've drawn, and hopefully that'll do a pretty good job of supporting these fully without changing the aesthetic. Just had a thought that because this is going to be an outdoor lounger, we don't want rain accumulating in the little pocket down here underneath the concrete. So at the edges here, maybe in the middle, I'm going to drill a few drainage holes. You won't see them because they'll be under the concrete, but hopefully that'll prevent rain from accumulating in this well.
For the finish, I'm just going with 5 coats of Halcyon Clear varnish because it's super easy to apply and also has great UV resistance since this is going to be outdoors. Now, as we're assembling the finished product, I'm thinking back to the design that this was inspired by and realized that inspiration can take different forms. Sometimes what you produce at the end looks somewhat similar with minor differences from the original. In this case, I think that it actually looks quite a bit different than the original, but because of the shape and the dimensions, it's definitely a nod to that famous Corbusier LC4 that first sparked my interest in furniture design. Now, one thing the Corbusier didn't do was spin. And to do that, I picked up heavy-duty Lazy Susan hardware, again from Rockler Woodworking. This swivel hardware is rated for up to 660 pounds, and its 24-inch width will fit the 30-inch base perfectly. I was super nervous about the hardware working, but this actually ended up being one of the easiest parts of the build. It took about 15 minutes, and the spinning action is super smooth.
All right. All right, so we just got upstairs, just brought the base up, and we're just thinking, we need to make one change.
This thing needs some LEDs. So we're gonna flip it over, throw some undermount LEDs on that base. Give it a cool floating effect.
Test and see. Oh yeah, that's gonna be cool. Before we get to all the close-up beauty shots, I wanna talk about some of the mistakes and things I do differently. So those little chips in the corner, I sort of repaired them, but at the end of the day, I decided that this one is gonna be just a prototype, so I didn't want to spend a bunch of time and energy on that. And the mistakes that led to the corners popping out, well, they're pretty easy fixes, but they happened way earlier in the process. So there are 2 things that I needed to do when I was building the form. The first one was cut that plastic sheet wider. When you adhere that plastic sheet with the contact cement, it's instant bond. That means you have to have it aligned perfectly straight over those hills right from the get-go. Now, I anticipated it would be tough to line up, so I think I gave myself about an inch and a half extra, but that just wasn't enough extra material to allow for the plastic being off center somewhat. And as a result of not having enough extra material, trying to get it aligned straight, there were some air bubbles that got introduced between the plywood and that plastic layer. Those gave out under the weight of the concrete, caused the cracking. There you go. Second thing I could have done at the corners was put some spray foam or something solid into those ends where it was unsupported. And if I'd done that, the side blowouts would have been no issue. But I think we've got a good proof of concept with this. We got some pictures. We'll put it on the web store I'm launching later this year. And if we get orders for something like this, well, then we know how to fix the problem. Would we build it for a customer? Second thing, I know we're gonna get questions whether it's comfortable or not. Well, all I can say is you'd be surprised. Chances are I'm gonna put it somewhere where we could put an umbrella or something over it if you want to stay a little bit cooler. And with that, let's cue the final beauty shots. As always, I want to thank you guys for coming by, watching the video, supporting the channel. It really means the world to me. And if you think I've earned it, please hit the subscribe button, hit the bell button. We're closing in on 1 million subs, and that would just be an amazing milestone to hit this year. That's it for this time, and I'll see you guys next time. Welcome back, everyone. We're picking up right where we left off with the bathroom renovation. We got one project left here, and that is fabricating a custom concrete countertop and sink. I want to talk for a second about how I arrived at the specific shape of sink that I did. We're going to have 2 bowl areas within one large sink that both drain into a center drain. That means we're not going to have countertop space in the middle, but I wanted to come up with a design that actually kind of got smaller and created a bit more counter space in the middle. The first one I came up with, I was kind of going for this idea of almost like an infinity symbol shape. And at first I kind of liked it, but I showed it to cameraman Cam, and he immediately pointed out that it kind of resembled something his girlfriend might ask him to run to the store to get, and he'd be kind of embarrassed when checking out. And after he said that, couldn't unsee it, so we scratched that idea. Next up, I tried a single crescent on the front, so a little bit of asymmetry there from front to back, and I went with a pyramidal ramp in the middle that all angled towards a drain in the middle. And when I saw this, I just really liked how it looked, so that is the model we're gonna go with. So now we got a design, but the challenging part is seeing if we can turn that complex 3-dimensional geometric shape into a reality down in the workshop. I'm using standard woodworking tools to cut down a block of foam that we're going to 3D carve the shape of the sink mold from. And the shape we're going for is just gonna be the inverse of the sink itself, so that when we pour concrete over it, it forms the shape of the sink I designed. The sink's gonna be 4 inches deep, so we're stacking 2 of these together. Now in the past, I've had some problems with the foam melting and disintegrating with the adhesive that I used to try to stack sheets together. I just found a product, never knew it existed. Polystyrene foam insulation spray adhesive. So I'm really hoping that this doesn't degrade it, because this stuff actually costs more than double what it used to cost. It was like over $50 a sheet, and it used to be like 25 bucks. Oh my God! And I'm gonna keep complaining until the prices go down. You guys think it's gonna have any effect? Probably not. So far, seems to be sticking. The real test will come once we start cutting stuff on the CNC, which we'll do momentarily. You ever have those things where every single time you do it, it feels like the first time? Well, that's how doing the 3D carves on the CNC is. It's different than like the cabinets and all the other stuff I've done. It's just a lot more involved once you get into the 3-dimensional contours. It's been about 2 years since I did this last, so I basically had to relearn everything. Please wish me luck. Let's hope this goes well. And if not, I guess it'll make good content. The clearing pass was a success. It kind of looks like a pyramid or stepping stone. Now we have to go over it again to smooth out all the edges, and I hope I got everything lined back up with the new bit in. Only way to find out now is just to hit play and see if it goes to the right spot. Yes, okay, I think it's the right spot. It looks like it's lined back up. I am very happy how this came out. And it was first try this time. I didn't screw it up for once. For once, it worked. Yay! This is a really nice shape, but obviously there are some imperfections in the surface. Just this is not expensive foam. That means we're going to have to fill in the imperfections. I'm going to start by just using some spackling. Same stuff you can use to patch up holes in drywall and that sort of thing. And we're going to rub that on to get a really even surface. Then if I need it, make the judgment call. At the time, we might come back with some joint compound on top of the spackling to get it a little smoother, and then we can put some epoxy on top of it to fully waterproof it. And you can't put the epoxy straight onto the foam because it would melt it, and that would just be absolutely frickin' devastating. So I ended up doing 4 coats, 1 of spackling to get the big holes, and then 3 with the drywall mud, sanding in between each. So it ended up taking a few days to get this ready, but we are finally ready to dump some epoxy on this thing. We're gonna use a tabletop epoxy because that's gonna be self-leveling. After the first coat, there's still probably gonna be some bumps. So we'll sand that coat down to eliminate high spots and then come back with our final coat. We're gonna use some beautiful, somewhat tacky, but still beautiful, sparkly colored pigments in the epoxy. And that's gonna help us know that we're getting an even coat on the surface. One thing I've discovered working with an open garage here in epoxy is that gnats love some epoxy. We just got our first one about 20 minutes after the pour. Poor little guy, he is stuck. Sorry, dude. I don't think getting him out of there is gonna help him. Cut the sides of the form next, and I think I want to do 1.25 inches thick, just for appearances. Like, we only need to go 3/4 for strength, but I like the thickness of the kitchen countertop, so let's just like run upstairs, and I'm just gonna confirm what I did there. Do the same thing. All right, 1.25 inches it is. So we want the sink and countertop to fit perfectly, and that is a challenge because walls aren't always straight. What that means is we're gonna do a template, which is probably gonna be like slightly off of rectangular. For the template, I had these 1/8 inch MDF strips. I cut it into strips on the table saw, and we're gonna use hot glue and shears, cut this quickly and make our form. All right, so now we can replicate the exact shape we need on a piece of melamine. So I've got it marked which side is the front, and we're just gonna set that right onto a base sheet of melamine. We're basically just gonna take these pre-cut sides and set them right up against our template walls. So after we lay all the sides in place, I'm gonna come around with these little blocks of scrap wood I cut. We're gonna put those up against the side, use hot glue to tack the outside of the walls and these little blocks in place. Then we'll come back with screws to hold the blocks down. So between the hot glue on the outside, the blocks supporting it on the outside, and the silicone that we're gonna put on the inside edges, that's gonna be plenty to hold the walls up since they're only 1.25 inches. I let the epoxy cure, I sanded the form down so it's as nice and smooth as I can possibly get it. 220 grit, because we don't want it so smooth that the concrete just slides off of it. I also made this little drain plug on the CNC. It's gonna go right here, sit on top of this, and this will create a hole where the drain for the sink will go. I got my measuring board so I know it's parallel with the front surface, the right distance. And then I can just take a little hot glue, which will melt it, but it doesn't really matter if it melts it underneath. A few dabs just to hold it until we get some silicone in there. With that, I think it is time for another episode of
Caulk Talk, which is the same as every episode of Caulk Talk. I apply a layer of paste wax to the melamine, lay down a generous layer of 100% silicone caulk, run a metal fondant ball tool over all the caulk lines. Metal fondant ball tool pushes excess caulk to the sides, leaves a clean line over the seam, and the layer of paste wax makes it easy to peel the excess caulk away once it cures, leaving a perfect caulk line. And that's it for this episode of Caulk Talk.
All right, we got everything laid out to spray the concrete, and hopefully this time will go smooth. If you saw my last video, you'll know that that isn't always the case. Oh my God, come on. Oh, this is not how it's supposed to go at all. Stuck again. This time I got a new air compressor that's way beefier than my old one. Shouldn't be an issue to keep the pressure up. Also, while I was getting new toys, Colomix decided to send me this new crazy double helix mixer, which could just give us a buttery smooth, like pancake batter, cake batter mix. And check this out. This goes into just, this is so cool. They sent me this tool called the Aquix. You hook it up to a hose and you can actually just dial in the exact amount of water you want. Like dial in 0.9 gallons, you hit play, and then it just automatically fills 0.9 gallons. I mean, it may not be 100% necessary, but it is so cool. All right, 18 hours later, and the concrete is curing nicely, and before it gets too hard, we gotta grind all these edges here flat so that it will sit on the vanity evenly. You got two options. You can go dry, in which case it is a crazy, massive dust storm, or you can do a wet grinding, which means you're slinging concrete mud everywhere. We're gonna go for that option because it's a little more contained, even though it's kind of disgusting. But hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. This is the pinnacle of fashion right here. So there's a few steps here we did before we brought it up. The first thing, we had to make room for the sink. We had these dividers here, and I sort of had planned ahead that I was gonna have to cut them out, but I didn't know the actual size of the sink when I made the cabinet. So I just waited until I built the sink, could measure it, and now I've got these cutouts in the dividers that are gonna allow the sink to sit into the cabinet. And I've made the mistake before of not leveling cabinets before I put the countertops on, and it just makes your life a lot more difficult. So I took all the drawers out, made it nice and light, and adjusted all the leveling feet to get this thing dead level before we brought the countertop and sink on. This is something I didn't do last time, but we've got these side panels here that are gonna go on the vanity to give it a nice custom built-in look. Obviously it'll be easier to get those in before the countertop is on, so screw those in real quick. Drop it in, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Woo! She is in, and I am one happy camper. I hope you guys are digging it too. Leave a comment, let me know how you think the bathroom is coming together. Next up, we got a lot of finishing touches to finish this bathroom, and I gotta renovate the entire half bath across the hall. I plan to do that in pretty quick order because we're in this final push to finish off the building right now, trying to get the whole thing done in the next 3 months so we can call it a wrap on this building renovation. For those of you that are just joining, just watching these videos, where have you been? I'm glad to have you here though. Make sure you go up to that playlist in the corner, get caught up on all the videos because we're coming to an end soon and you don't want to be behind when we get there. For all of you that have been here since the beginning, you know I love you guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's it for this time, and I'll see you next time. A while back, Kim Kardashian did an in-home interview with Vogue, and there was just a glimpse of her bathroom during the interview. Viewers noticed her seemingly flat, sinkless sink, and it set the internet on fire.
But come on, those sinks are next level. Where does the water even go?
There was so much buzz about her sink, she took to the socials to show everyone that it did in fact work.
It does actually like slightly slope down that you can kind of see. And there's a slit for the water.
So now we know the sink works, but inquiring minds want to know how the heck was it made? She also mentioned that it cost over $30,000. So in this video, I'm going to try to build a replica of Kim Kardashian's viral sink and see if it actually justifies a $30,000 price. Oh, that's so cool. All right, day one. And this is a project I've been wanting to do for a really long time, but honestly, the flat sink thing was just so impractical, I didn't want to do it for my own home. But recently, a fan who's a home builder was asking for help doing concrete sinks for an Airbnb that he's building nearby, and it seemed like a perfect fit for this project. So today, we're gonna go meet him out at Fishstone Concrete in the Chicago burbs, and hopefully build this sink in 3 days.
Yeah, see you. Hey, Ben. Doing well, doing well. Yeah. Hey. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Did you bring the dog?
I did.
Hi, bud. I know, it's exciting. Come on.
We got all the supervisors here today with Tex.
12 seconds later.
Yeah. Tex already made himself at home right here. I did walk him this morning, but you know.
Just to give you guys a little preview, we got Tom Fisher, owner of Fishstone. We got Chris Grunwald over here, who's been watching the channel and called me about making some sinks. Basically told him if you make the exact sink I want to make, then you can come and make it with me.
A nice guy.
He said that sounded fun, so let's hope it is.
This is basically the system we're going to be using to make that gradually sloped sink, right?
Correct.
So what do we got here?
So this is stretch form fabric. It's a stretchable fabric that has a waterproof membrane on there.
What I've seen this before is like they stretch a fabric over something and then you make like a fiberglass mold. I haven't seen them pour directly onto a fabric, so that's pretty cool. So we might have given up the whole secret, but not really, because you'll notice on this one, the sink is really high. This would not look like an invisible drain. You notice there's flex when we put the concrete on there. Getting that flex right, there's gonna be some skill and maybe a little bit of luck. Make sure that we can get enough of a slope when we're using a tiny, like 3/4 inch high piece of wood underneath this to make it. All right, so we got a plan?
Yep.
Let's build the form.
Let's get to it.
Now, when I said we had a plan there, I think there might have been some YouTuber enthusiasm going on because we still weren't sure if the flex fabric could be pulled taut enough to create that super low profile drain without flexing so much that it just became flat under the weight of the concrete. But we decided to put that question to the side for a moment and just get going, get our hands in there, and cut out the melamine pieces for the rest of the form. However, things almost went from bad to worse when Chris was cutting the base of the form.
You all right? Just want to jump in here real quick and explain what happened. Chris is a professional contractor with lots of experience using power tools, but most of us use battery power tools, and he hadn't used a corded saw in ages. He got distracted focusing on keeping the cord out of the way and took his hand off the tool. It's a good reminder that even if you have a lot of experience, you got to pay attention and keep your mind in the game when you're using dangerous power tools. A big thanks to Chris, too, for letting us share his mistakes so others can learn from it. Okay, since thankfully everyone still has 10 fingers, it's time to figure out how the heck we're gonna make the mold for this crazy invisible sink.
So after much deliberation, we decided our best chance was to use clay and sculpt the inverse shape of each basin and then cover that clay with the stretched fabric. Now the trick would be sculpting the clay in an even and gradually increasing slope so that it ended up pulling off the invisible look that we wanted.
We called in an expert. Tom's wife, Carrie, is a sculptor here in Chicago. She's done some really cool stuff around the city.
Working with this clay was challenging, but a lot of fun. You heat it up and soften it to make it workable, and then we used whatever tools we had on hand to try to shape it into a symmetrical and gradually increasing slope circle around the center of the drain.
This is starting to seem like it's gonna work. We're gonna put the fabric over that. Pretty excited to see how it comes out. When I make concrete sinks, I always get a lot of questions about the drain and how do you make the drain hole. This is a drain kit made for very small slot drains. Tom, you want to
Sure, absolutely.
show us what it's about?
What we're going to do is we're going to drill some pilot holes to create some holes for pins that we can then attach the slot drain fitting, which then has another fitting on there. And then we take a couple PVC fittings, fit over that. That's what's going to hook up to a standard drain faucet.
There's definitely a little more refined than what I've used before.
And now it's time for another episode of Caulk Talk, which is the same as every episode of Caulk Talk. I apply a layer of paste wax to the melting, lay down a generous layer of 100% silicone caulk, run a metal fondant ball tool over all the caulk lines. Metal fondant ball tool pushes excess caulk to the sides, leaves a clean line over the seam, and the layer of paste wax makes it easy to peel the excess caulk away once it cures, leaving a perfect caulk line. And that's it for this episode of Caulk Talk.
This is not really part of this video, but Chris is making a second sink here. And I wanted to show this because he brought in some black melamine to make the form, and the black melamine, it looks super, super cool. I think I might have to find some of this for some of my future builds. All right, we are back. Day 2, we're gonna just put a pinch of this yellow oxide pigment, which is kind of like a brownish yellow. So you just give it a slightly off-white color. It's gonna match the rest of the stuff in Chris's bathroom.
To get a perfectly smooth surface, we're spraying on the face coat first and then using a brush to pop any air bubbles in the concrete that might be trapped against it. While waiting for the face coat to firm up a bit, we added a back form for the vertical apron, which will make it much easier to do the backer coat on this vertical surface.
I'm mixing up here. Chris is gonna spray his face coat. This is actually his first time he's learning today, which is super cool to get someone in the concrete community. While we're doing that, Tom's gonna go mix up the backer coat with glass fibers that we're gonna put into our sink.
Everything is filled in. We got our nice little volcanoes built up around the sinks. Now it's just a waiting game. Very excited to see how this one comes out. It's 3 days later now, and we are on the road heading back out to Crystal Lake. It is Concrete Christmas Day. We're getting to demold everything. I'm super excited to see how this all turns out. Feel ready? All right, so these are looking pretty good on the underside. Next up here, we're gonna use the form as a guide. Just grind down the side there, grind the top here so we get a nice clean edge, and then we can take it out of the form. While we're moving these inside, ooh, it's looking pretty nice. Like a sandy color like you were going for there. I can't see it. Oh yeah, baby. All right. I think that's gonna work. From right here, it looks almost like there's no drain, but it's gonna be enough that'll flow, I think. We're happy. Next step, we're gonna do a little acid.
But someone was looking for you.
Acid wash, that is. Right now, we're going to show you how you make a hole for a faucet in a concrete countertop. It's be the same thing you would do for granite or marble. Lots of people ask about this. Tom's going to man the drill attachment to the angle grinder. We got this donut to kind of keep the water in. We showed that process on Chris's other sink just because, well, it's a lot simpler. He's going to wait till he has the actual faucets in hand on the other sink just to make sure it lines up straight. So he'll be doing that exact same process on his own. All right, so we got the first coat of sealer on. We're gonna do a couple more, but the next time I'm gonna see you guys is gonna be up in Wisconsin at Chris's Airbnb. It's a few months later, and before we head out to the Airbnb to check out the finished sink, I wanna talk about that $30,000 price and one other thing. So first, I gotta give some credit where credit's due. The way I originally found out about the sink was another fan who'd reached out to me, and they were in Florida. I think it was back in 2021 when I was in the midst of redoing this whole building. So I really didn't have time to take on projects for anyone else. So I had to turn down that project. But to that viewer, if you're watching, I just want to thank you. You were the one I got the idea from. It worked out like it did because Chris's Airbnb is local. So now let's talk about that $30,000 price tag. Did Kim K get ripped off, or is it worth it? Well, you guys know I did a video on $10,000 concrete countertops a while back, and I certainly believe that concrete artisan work is worth quite a bit of money. It's very difficult labor. It takes skill and time to pull off properly. So even though there were only about $500 in materials that went into making the sink, yes, it's gonna be worth quite a bit more than that. $30,000 though, honestly, that feels like a bit much. Now she mentioned something about why it costs so much.
8 versions of this prototype sink was made.
Now we did this in 3 days on the first try, and I'll let you guys be the judge, but I think we nailed the look pretty spot on. So should she have paid for the labor to do this 8 times, to make 8 prototypes? I don't know. If I were to make something like this for a client, installed, it would probably run somewhere in the $15,000 to $20,000 range. So not a complete ripoff, but I do think that price was pretty high. I know you guys will have thoughts, so leave a comment and let me know. Without further ado, let's head out to the Airbnb and check out the sink. Wow. Okay, this is better in person than in the photos I saw. It's huge, open, and then just boom, open to the wide view of the forest, the lake beyond that. Really, really cool. So before we reveal the sink, I want to do a mini tour of this Airbnb. This is the upper deck here. It's a really cool view here of the forest. They're actually working still on the exterior landscaping. You're gonna have a path that leads from the house all the way down to the lake. Then there'll be another path on the side that leads to the cedar sauna. We're gonna check the downstairs area out next. Pit stop on the way down. You got 2 bedrooms here. It looks like both like really good size with kings. Then we got this bathroom here, which has got this cool little, I guess this is like a sitting tub, because it's the tiniest bathtub I've seen, but super cool. And over here is the second sink. I actually hadn't seen this one. Chris actually went and made this on his own, and it came out super cool for his first solo sink. Any of you guys are thinking of trying some GFRC to make some really cool sinks, countertops, whatever, I highly recommend it because, well, here's proof that with a little determination, you can get some super high-end results. Now moving downstairs. Oh, this is such a cool hangout spot. So it looks like coming down, he's got like a little gym. They've got these like full arcade machines. Over here, there's a second like bar with a big TV, a pub table, a cool little hangout area. I want to come back with like a bunch of friends for like a weekend at this place. This is so cool. Then over here, he's got full game room, foosball, pool table. I don't know, see if I TV anywhere.
Mike, look up.
Oh, okay. Okay, I see you, Chris. Got a remote. That is pretty cool. We're now out on the lower deck and there's this big cedar hot tub here. Really beautiful. Definitely gonna hit that up later. Now let's head on upstairs, and I think that should be where the Kim Kardashian sink is. Here you got the loft area. They've set it up like an office, which is really cool because I'm working remotely today, so be doing a little editing right there, editing this video. And across the hall here, you've got another bedroom, which is also really cool, kind of like a Japanese low profile room. Before we check out the Kim K sink in the last bathroom, I want to give a quick shout out to Chris, who took a chance on this, put it in his place. I still don't know if it's going to work, but hopefully it will. The Airbnb as a whole is beautiful, and if any of you are interested in booking it for a stay with your friends, it sleeps up to 12. It's only an hour and 25 minutes from Chicago, about an hour and 15 from Milwaukee, so perfect for a weekend getaway. I'll leave links in the description so you can go and book it for yourself. Highly recommend it. And now, let's see what that Kim K sink looks like. Oh, that's so cool. Loving this. This actually exceeds my expectations. Definitely looks invisible, so very, very cool. But not only does it look cool, let's do a test here. I've not done this yet. Chris said it works, but you know, we got to test for ourselves. Full blast. Would you look at that? And what happens if I wash my hands? I'd say that's success. All right, guys, while we're rolling those beauty shots, I just want to thank you guys for checking out this video, checking out the channel. If you like this project, we got a bunch more cool high-end design and build projects on the way, so make sure you sub and bell. Thanks again for watching. Love all of you. That's it for this time, and I'll see you guys next time.
Dex, what do you think? Victor, you gonna come? Tell me what you think. Is that all good? Dex, what do you think? Oh yeah, good stuff.
Been in my head for a long time, been wanting to do a concrete fire pit up here. It's gonna be a single solid piece of blue concrete. I wanted to get this project in before we get back to the bathroom renovation because we've only got a few months of warm weather up here in Chicago, and by having a fire pit, it'll extend the deck season into October, maybe a touch of November if we're lucky. So without further ado, let's go to the first step, which is making the melamine form. For the big piece, I'm gonna start by breaking it down on the track saw. Then we're gonna head into the shop and cut the rest of it on the table saw.
Next thing, we got to cut out the foam knockouts that are going to create the voids in the concrete where we're going to drop in this concrete fire pan. So that is exactly 6 inches. We're going to make this a little bit bigger. We'll go 6.5 because we got these 1.25 inch tabs. Just going to take this and use this to get the measurement. We're going to just give ourselves, a little bit of wiggle room in both. So once you score it, should snap pretty easily for you. Right here. Boom. And we got a nice knockout for the fire pit. Now we're at the X-Carve Pro CNC to make the foam knockouts for the handles that are going to be on either side of the fire pit and the curvature that's going to create the feet on either side of the table. By the way, the knockout is just sort of the inverse shape of what we want the concrete to be. It'll make sense when we pour. So what I got here, just another piece of 1-inch insulation foam, got some double-sided tape, put that onto the machine. Make sure it's stuck nice and good. And then this thing will cut out some really, really pretty shapes. And we got the Inventables easel software here, which is like, if you're scared of CNC or digital fabrication, this is like super plug and play. You can just literally draw the shapes in here and then cut them out. It really is pretty simple. I can already hear the comments, I know. You saw it happening, same as I saw it. I cut the piece of foam too short. So, old adage, measure twice, cut once. Got me. I'm not gonna make you guys watch me cut that again. I'm just gonna do the CNC real quick off camera, and then we're going to head into the garage to assemble the form. Got the foam knockouts here, and all we gotta do now is use some electrical tape on the sides to make them waterproof. We're gonna put the foam knockouts onto all the sides where they go, attach them with double-sided tape, then put the box together. I think it's easier to attach all the foam knockouts to the pieces when you just got them flat laying on the table rather than you made the box and you're kind of reaching inside and, just a little more complicated. So we put these in now, then after these are all attached, we put the 5 sides of the form together.
Transfer the file over.
So we got the paste finishing wax next, rub it everywhere before we put the silicone caulk on. That's gonna allow us to use a fondant ball tool over the caulk lines and get absolutely perfect lines. Very cool technique. Also, #satisfied. It is concrete pour day, which is always super exciting and super stressful, but mostly exciting. We've got a couple things to do before we start mixing. I'm gonna cut some of this glass fiber scrim. This is gonna go into the form after we put the first backer layer in, and is gonna give it a lot of strength and help us pack it up the sides easier and go a lot thinner. We're actually gonna aim for 5/8 of an inch thick, which is very thin if you know anything about concrete, but it will be super strong with this stuff and our glass fiber mix. So it should fit right around that nicely and kind of go up the sides like so. Yeah, and that'll give us some good strength there. It is time for the concrete spray and pour, and we had somebody just stopped in the alley and is totally just having a loud phone conversation. We do YouTube. I'm making like a concrete fire table right now.
If you hear that during this, that's what's happening, and we've been waiting for it to stop, and it doesn't seem to be stopping. So I was just telling cameraman Cam that every single time I spray the face coat, it is just nerve-wracking. Like, it just happens so fast. Definitely something you can do yourself. I encourage you to try it at home if you're interested in it. Super fun, but it is just always going to be stressful because of the rate that things happen once you start mixing and the concrete's curing, and you gotta get the flow rate right, and it just takes some practice to get the hang of. Enough of me being a worrywart. Let's get to the mixing. We're gonna start off by mixing the water. We got this bright blue pigment, and we're actually gonna mix a little bit of the white pigment, actually a lot of the white pigment, to try and get a kind of pastel blue color, hopefully. And then we got our add mix, which is all kinds of good stuff to just make the mix stronger, more waterproof, all that sort of thing. And then we got a little plasticizer, which just makes it much more flowy without having to add more water to it. Because water is the enemy of strength when it comes to concrete. So this is just mixing everything but the mix. Oh, looks like a pretty cool blue color. You can always go more blue later. Oh my God, come on. Oh, this is not how it's supposed to go at all. I don't know if it's the tip is clogged. Why does it keep getting stuck? It's stuck again. I don't know if this will come off if we have the right footage to make it look like it was better and smoother than it actually was, but a trusty old air compressor basically gave out and just would not maintain pressure. We made it work, but yeah, it's time to order a new air compressor. That was like straight up panic mode and took way longer than it should have. Should have been like 3 minutes, and instead was 25 minutes of stopping, letting the air compressor recharge, spraying for 10 seconds, recharge for 5 minutes. Yeah, time for a new air compressor. Let's get to the back coat. Okay. All right, now is the time where we channel our inner Michelangelo. I don't know, whoever was an old sculptor. So now you can see it's almost like Play-Doh with these fibers, and we're just gonna pack it in there and work it up the sides in about a 1/4 inch layer. Then we let that set up for a few minutes and then do a second one, and then we'll be done, finally. With the first back coat hand packed in, we're gonna work this glass trim into that for some added strength. We'll come back after we work this in with one more coat and then be done. And you'll notice I always bring it up and over the sides when I'm hand packing it, because it always just inevitably, because of some slump, is gonna get thinner towards the top edge. So right now it's been curing about 14 hours, so it's hard, but probably only at like 60–70% of its final density. Right now, I can come back with this diamond blade and basically just cut off the excess concrete. Really cool. Okay, so now all I'm doing is a sort of quick and dirty finishing technique for concrete. Just a little, I got 320 grit, 320, 400 grit, hand sand, wet, very quickly, and you'll see that this sort of unevenness here should come off and it should even out quite a bit in color just by doing this. It's something you gotta feel, but you can sort of feel it smooth out under your hand as you're going, and you get used to that feel. Once you feel it get to that point you want, you just kind of move on. Make sure we get those. All right, a little more space. This just takes the edge off the bottom. Right, so right here you can see this is the line where we have the mishap with the air compressor. We had to stop. That edge right there is right where we stopped spraying. You can see we did the corners up there. I'm totally fine with it. Like the top looks beautiful. It adds a little character. It's for my personal use. If you were making something like this for a client, you would probably be like putting this up on your Instagram stories for fire sale and making a new one for the client. Just wanted to point that out because, you know, it's not always perfect, and sometimes I think on YouTube you kind of sometimes pretend it's more perfect than it is, but I'm very happy with this. So to seal this, I'm gonna go with Fishstone's U-Seal. It is a 2-part urethane finish, which means we're gonna mix it up, let it sit for about 20 minutes to fully react, and then we'll put it onto the fire pit with a roller. So eventually I plan to have natural gas lines up on the roof, but for now we're just gonna use a propane tank to fuel the fire kit, and off camera I went ahead and made a cover so this wouldn't be just like sitting out and unsightly. Let's just made a cedar, and we'll drop right over and be another nice little table. And if you're interested how I made this, I basically used the same technique that I used in my last video for the planter box. 2x4 frame, wrapped it in 4-inch cedar boards. Pretty quick to put together. It took me, honestly, like an hour and a half off camera to build this. Just threw it together. I also got a kit for the propane tank that comes with a valve and knob that allows to turn on and off the tank while it's inside here from the outside. To install the valve, we're just gonna drill one hole. It's got a little knob you can use to twist on and off. That way you don't have to pull this cover off every time you want to turn the tank on or off. Okay, now all we got to do is take this thing up to the roof, which might not be as bad as it seems. This thing is probably about 140 pounds, I'm guessing. So cameraman Cam and I are just going to carry it up. No problem for the two of us. 1, 2, 3. That looks good. All right, so we got this handy fire pit kit. Kind of comes with everything you need to hook it up to just like a regular propane tank, which is kind of nice. All right. There she is. So we got a couple different kinds of fiberglass that can go in there just to top it off. We got this black fiberglass and then a kind of a blue. I think actually we're gonna try a mix of them, but I like the black because of the contrast you get. We got it in and it is looking fire. Ching. But there's one thing I kind of screwed up here. I didn't check the lengths of the gas hoses. I need to go buy some longer hoses. So right now, the hose will not reach from there over to here. It must be like only 3 feet long. Thought it was longer, but hey, if that's the only problem, that's okay. I can go buy that cord and fix it up. So right now, we just got the tank, propane tank sitting here, and this is not permanently hooked up. And now, with the temporary setup we got going, let's fire it up and see what it looks like. It's the middle of the summer. It's like 85 degrees right now. But come fall, this is gonna give me an extra month of use at least up here on the roof. And I'm super stoked about that. I will be posting some pictures on my Instagram once I get the long enough hose, but I don't want to delay the content any further. I got to get it to you guys. So we're putting it out as it is. And if you're interested in more really cool concrete builds or seeing the rest of the videos making this deck, make sure to check out the videos that are going to be popping up on the screen right about now. That's it for this time, and I will see you guys next time. So my design idea for this lamp is something that I haven't seen done in exactly this way before, so I'm really excited and also nervous to try it. It's gonna be a 5-foot freestanding behemoth of a concrete floor lamp. We're gonna have a knocked out, sort of decayed looking section in the middle with rebar running through that section, kind of forming a cage around an Edison bulb that's gonna be extending down into this decayed opening right here. So this lamp could weigh over 200 pounds if my calculations are correct. First challenge is gonna be creating this decayed section in the middle where it looks almost like a wrecking ball or something smashed it. Now I've seen people kind of chisel this out before, but that seems like a lot of work. I've got an idea to actually do it in the mold by creating a form from sand that we then pour the concrete around. The second part is gonna be the electronics. I want all the wires to be hidden so it just looks like the bulb is floating in the middle of this decayed concrete beam. We'll have to figure out a way to run the wires through the concrete, cast the concrete around it, and not screw up the electronics when we're pouring concrete over it. I think I've got ideas to make those work, and we will find out as we go. So the first step is gonna be building a melamine form that we're gonna pour the concrete into to make the lamp. Got everything cut down, and now it's time to build the concrete form. This one, pretty darn simple, basically just a box. We're gonna assemble it with some drywall screws. And of course we're gonna pre-drill, because you gotta pre-drill it when you're going into melamine. Super easy way to get everything square. You just use a couple speed squares to line everything up. And then channel sponsor Rockwell Woodworking makes these simple little corner clamps, which just lock into any 3/4 inch material. And then we lock it in with some hot glue before we can screw it in. If you're making melamine forms like this, if you don't line it up properly, this is what happens. Busted through to the inside. We're going for an urban decay look, so a little bit of imperfection is actually probably a good thing for the design. I'm just gonna say that, play it off like I meant to do it, but really I just wanted to show this as a cautionary tale to remind you guys to always be careful, mark your cuts, take your time. You really can't undo the imperfection that's gonna be left by that. With everything in the form assembled, it was time to waterproof the seams. We first put down a layer of paste wax on everything. And as always, I'm gonna be using silicone caulk. Then we come back with a cake fondant ball tool, run that over all the seams, pushes all the excess caulk to the sides. Then once the caulk is dried, you can peel that excess caulk away and you get left with that beautiful, satisfying, perfect caulk line on all the seams. I want to do a sidebar quickly to talk about this design and some of the design ideas that I didn't do on the way to arriving the design that I did do. My original idea was to leave the void just like I'm doing here with the sand, but actually to fill that whole void with epoxy and then have some way to illuminate inside the epoxy so it glowed in this cavity here. And I learned some things. So first, kind of simply, epoxy weighs a ton. It would have put this lamp at like 350 pounds. It might have been at the point where I don't even know how the hell we would have carried it upstairs. Also, most importantly, this lamp is in Karma's memory, and so his light's supposed to shine on. I didn't want something that would burn out after 5 years or 10 years like most LED lights will do. So I decided to hold on this idea, use the rebar, go with the classic vintage Edison bulb look, suspended in the cavity, just so that I knew I could replace it. And I also think it looks really cool. Sometimes a little simpler can be better. And I think it was for the purposes of making a lamp in Karma's memory. Still think it might be a cool exercise in design to make a lamp like this on a little bit bigger scale. Leave a comment, let me know if you'd like to see that, and we might do that in a future video. And now, let's get back to this build. I've got some rebar right here. We're just gonna use that rebar to create kind of a cage structure that'll span between the lower and upper chunks of concrete. First, we gotta cut down the lengths of rebar on the chop saw. Then we're gonna bust out the welder, let some sparks fly, and have some fun with that.
So the idea here to get the urban decay effect with the two halves of concrete, jagged edges, and opening in the middle, instead of like trying to chisel it all out later, which is a ton of work, inexact, I've got a bunch of play sand here that I've wetted down, and we're basically gonna almost make like a sandcastle type thing in the middle here, stack that up, and then that sand will hold this rebar structure in place. So for the light, I picked up this waterproof socket. We're basically just gonna embed that right into the sand so that we can cast the concrete around it and hold it in place. But we're not just gonna leave the wire loose in the concrete. That would be a little bit risky. So instead, I picked up some 1/2-inch PVC pipe. We're gonna run the wire through the PVC pipe, have that all held in place, and then pour the concrete around that so that the wire runs through the PVC pipe inside the concrete, and the socket will be accessible from the opening in the middle. And if it doesn't make sense, you'll see when we put it all together how it's gonna work. All right, so I think we are good to go. We got the sand packed up all the way through. We got our PVC pipe running all the way down, coming out the back with the wire. I tested the wire before I put this in, and the lamp works. So I batched out all the concrete mix, about 200 pounds worth. I'm thinking should be enough, especially with that. Ready to pour first thing in the morning. Go time. Let's mix up the Fishstone, pour this thing. We're gonna do the first batch of concrete, and then we're gonna do our little tribute to Karma on the second one. Got to ease into it a little bit before I get to that. Next up, I made a design audible and decided to add a walnut base to the lamp. The base is gonna be simple but elegant, basically just a box with a recessed floor for the lamp to rest in. So I started by cutting the mitered sides to length on the table saw. I then moved over to my Rockler ProLift router table to route out a ledge that the bottom pieces of the base will rest on.
So I got all the walnut pieces for the base cut up right over here. We're gonna carve some little legs into each of the sides just to give it a little lift off the floor so it doesn't seem so bulky. To do that, we're gonna make a template on the CNC and then route out the leg curves. All right, so apologies for all the clutter because we are working in a halfway moved back in workshop. I haven't moved all the storage and tables back into this main woodworking area because I'm debating whether I want to do concrete or epoxy floors in here, in which case I'll have to take everything out again. I am just so sick of renovation right now though, so very much up in the air. We'll see. It may just be rubber mats on the floor. But anyway, we got all four sides of the base clamped up. We're just going to use the tape as a clamp method to make our little box. All right, guys, concrete Christmas Day. We get to demold. I'm super excited. So it is gonna be a little tricky because we used a 1.5 bags, which is like 75 pounds of sand, but then we added a bunch of water to it. So it's probably 100 pounds of sand. The melamine is probably another 70 pounds. And then the concrete, so it's like 400 pounds. So we cannot move it until we demold it. I always like to check just to make sure it's mostly done curing. So like room temperature, we got about 63 degrees.
This is about 68. So it still is curing a little bit, but that's fine. A few hours after you poured, and I shared this on my Instagram stories, which you guys should follow, it was at 114 degrees. So it was very hot as the chemical reaction of the concrete curing releases heat. But yeah, we're okay now. 67 degrees, so totally fine to demold this now. Plan here is I'm just gonna sand the back down, get it a little bit smoother. Then I'm just gonna try to take a shop vac and suck the sand out of the void as much as I can and take the melting off. And then hopefully once we get all that out, we'll be able to maneuver it into the shop and hook up the lights. That's really cool. That's really cool. I'm happy. I'm happy with what I'm seeing. I want to make sure I don't cut the cord when I'm cutting this off. Basically, I'm just going to put a pencil in to make sure that I don't go through. So I'll hit the pencil first. There we go. Success. This is no joke. And I hope that this is in the off position. Yeah! This thing is heavier than I expected, and it's also really challenging to find a way for 3 people to grip it. I got Jacob here to help, and theoretically 250 pounds, 3 guys should be able to get this up, but I don't know. We're gonna try, find out if we can do it. Oh, geez, that's heavy. This is an insane workout just to keep you from slipping. What's up? Like the Austin Powers. Oh my God, my arms are burning. I don't know if you guys are gonna be able to lift the bottom part up. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Woo! Woo! We're in! Yes, we did it! Slide it up. If you guys like this one, I've got a bunch of other really cool concrete projects. Make sure you subscribe, bell, all that good stuff. That's it for this time, and I'll see you next time.